Hi guys, I'm Kaden, and today we're going to be teaching you how to make pho. I'm so sorry I've been MIA. I've had a lot of issues going on in my personal life, but they're all sorted out now, so hopefully we can get right back on track. I am Thai, for those of you who don't know, and actually pho is a Vietnamese dish, but it is my favorite dish. And so I have tried to learn how to make it at home so that I don't have to spend money and go out every single night for takeout. So here is my recipe on how I make it at home. It does take practice. It took me a number of times, but this is a good way to do it in a more cheaper, quicker, and efficient way for those of you who are like me that like to make quick, easy, and delicious meals, especially you pho fanatics. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, so you're going to want a pot big enough to cover the meat because you're going to boil it before we start cooking. You can really get any meat that you want as long as it has bones. So for this one, I got oxtail and beef neck bones. To me, they taste the same and you get them for a cheaper price. You are going to then place all of the meat in the pot and cover it with water. And once the meat is fully submerged, we're just going to turn the burner on high and let it boil. And while we let that boil, we're going to start prepping for the rest of the pot. You're going to need 2 onions, and one of them is going to be white, one of them is going to be red. So for this one, we're going to start off for the white onion, and we're going to cut it in half, peel it, and then we're going to take a butcher knife and kind of cut a cross in it so that the juices can come out a lot easier into the broth. And then we're going to get ginger. We only need about 2 inches of it, but I pretty much just guesstimate based on the amount that I want to taste in my broth. And we're going to peel that and then cut it just so the aroma can easily come out into the broth as well. They don't have to be perfect because we're going to scoop them out. So like about this amount is good. And we're going to set that aside. While the pot starts to boil, we're going to take these cloves and just get about 5 of them. Take about 1 cinnamon stick, but for me, I couldn't get them all out, so I just kind of crushed them and took out as many as I could. I have 2 anise pods here, and then about 1/8 of a teaspoon of coriander. I only had a quarter, so I just basically did half of that to make 1/8. So the mixture should pretty much look like this. By this time, your pot should start boiling, so we're going to turn the burner off and remove it from the heat. You can use any strainer you want. I use this one. And we're just going to dump all that water out. Now, some people like to skim it before they do that just to get everything off, but I wash my meat anyways afterwards, so it doesn't really matter. And it should look something like this with all that gooey, yucky stuff. Now, because it has all that residue on it, I take the meat and I wash it. Make sure you wear gloves or something because it is going to be hot straight out of the pot. And then set it aside once you're sure that all the residue is off from the oil. And this is what it looks like all washed off. Whether you have a hot pot, pressure cooker, or instant pot, we're going to put it on saute because this one doesn't have simmer. And we're going to put in that herb and spice mixture into the pot and kind of move it around with the onion and the ginger until it's a little toasty, which should only take about 2 to 3 minutes. Once that's done, we're going to fill the pot up to 10 cups. If your pot is as cool as mine, it should have a line to show you where that is. And this is going to be your broth, so make sure your water is good. If not, you might want to filter it. We're then going to add that meat that we just washed off. Make sure it's fully submerged. And then we're going to add a teaspoon of sea salt and half of an apple. To me, it doesn't really matter what type of apple as long as it's sweet, so I would definitely go for the red ones versus the Granny Smith green apples because those tend to be a bit more sour. Make sure the pressure cooker is closed and then set the timer to 15 to 30 minutes depending on how you like your broth. I set mine to 30. While that cooks, we can go ahead and prep the toppings. I got scallions instead of chives. To me, they don't mean any difference, so I usually just chop those up, and then I take about 1/4 of a red onion and I peel it to make those thin onion slices that you see at the top of pho. And really whatever you want in your pho you can add yourself, but these are the ingredients that I had on hand that I wanted in mine, so you don't exactly have to follow it precisely. But I also took this mint, just a few sprigs, not too much, and then some basil, only because I couldn't find Thai basil in my local markets. I then chopped up some cilantro and added some bean sprouts, cut up a green lime, and created my topping board for later. I then washed out that pot I used earlier and put the strainer in it, and once the pressure cooker was done, I dumped everything into that strainer over the pot so that the broth and the components of the broth were separated. So now your broth should look something like this. It kind of looks oily. And then you can separate the onion and ginger from the meat and cut up the meat as you'd like. Or don't use it at all if you just wanted it for the broth. Because we're going to be using this thinly sliced sirloin tip beef for the actual meat in the soup if you don't already use the meat from your broth. I used both because I like both, but you don't have to. I then placed that pot on the stove to simmer just to keep it warm, and I added some fish sauce and also some sweetener. And I believe I also did add some MSG that I didn't get on camera, just to amplify the taste of everything. This part is crucial to taste test because it can go from one extreme to another if you're not diligent on how much you're adding. Grab your hoisin sauce and set a small pot to boil with the hoisin sauce in it so that it has some flavor. That way when we take the raw meat and the noodles, it kind of soaks up some of that flavor at the same time. So what I did was blanch the meat so that it could be well done for my husband. That way the broth can cook it, but also it's already blanched enough so that it's not going to be medium rare by the time he eats it. And then I take my noodles and I boil them until they're the consistency of being done. And I place those and the meat from the broth that I made in a bowl. I then add my toppings that I desire. You can add red chili pepper if you'd like. I didn't, only because my husband cannot do spicy, so I didn't film that. And there you have it, homemade pho. Don't forget your sriracha and hoisin sauce on the side.
Leave a comment below if you tried making the soup yourself. Let me know if it was delicious or if it came out a little weird. I know it took me a number of tries to get it down perfectly, but hopefully my method has taught you something. If you have some of your own tips, your own recipes, please let me know. I would love to try them out. I love eating. Thanks for watching.